Hello and welcome to Procrastination Point's video Snark. I'm continuing my sarcastic book review of The Mister by E.L. James. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 7. I think that we are spared the tedium of Max going on the actual tour and just have him recount the entire thing to us later. However, it's not going to stop him from going full-on old-school gothic and thinking about the rain and his childhood. Since this is literally just a poorly written adult romance, I'm just going to snort with derision and move on quickly. Max also thinks about how exhausted he is over pretending to be happy over everything he saw and did. Furthermore, he's baffled at just how many people actually work for the estate just to keep it running. And oh no, the little witch boy just realized that the floors don't magically clean themselves, the fires don't magically start, and the food doesn't magically appear on the table. Ugh. He continues to mope about how all of this was supposed to have been Kit's job and now he's in the family crypt. He also mopes about how much he hates shooting anything alive. And then for good measure he mopes about not being in London with Elisa. Meanwhile, Elisa goes to Max's apartment to clean it and is happy that the alarm is off. She thinks about how she missed his presence while he was away. However, she's somehow still surprised when she finds him dead asleep on the sofa. She watches him and thinks about touching him. However, as she does so, in his sleep, he grabs her hand and refuses to let go, muttering about how much he missed her. Elisa stays there and thinks about how comforting his smell is and how it reminds her of home somehow. She kisses him ever so slightly and seems almost shocked at how brazenly she acted. And then she wakes him saying that he has to move. Max jerks awake and is super apologetic over the entire thing. He says that he was driving all night to get back and came in at 4 a.m. He's also apologetic over the mud he tracked in. Max then tries to take his muddy boots off, but Elisa insists that she'll do it. And, can we not? The theme of Servant Master is already super thick with this. But thankfully, the narration doesn't linger over the scene and we move straight to Lisa ordering him to get some more rest. He lies down again and Elisa goes back to her work. She's also insanely hung up over how she kissed him. Meanwhile, Max ponders over his own point of view from what just happened. He thinks about how he hurried home because the radio had been predicting a blizzard and he hadn't wanted to be stuck at the estate for another week, not without Elisa. He also thinks that it's weird that a woman would just tuck him into bed and then just leave. Max wakes up later from a call that goes to voicemail before he can answer it. He looks at the things laid out on the nightstand and thinks that Elisa must have emptied his pockets before taking his things to the wash. The idea of checking pockets before throwing things into the wash is so normal to me, but Max just gets upset that Elisa probably does it on a regular basis for all of her clients. He looks out the window and is surprised that there's just a wall of white. However, it's not that late, so he goes to see if Elisa is still there. She is. He asks where she lives and how she got there, all of which is meaningless to me. James spends so much time reminding everybody of how British that this book is, but can't be bothered to explain things like the location of X, Y, and Z to us. Anyway, when she tells him that she takes the train, he looks online and finds that those trains aren't running because of the storm. Elisa insists that she'll walk home, but Max worries that she'll get sick and die and offers to take her. He leaves to get dressed, but encourages her to play the piano while she's waiting for him. After Max leaves, Elisa thinks about how weird it would be for her to be alone with a man in a car. No, her father would not approve. Her father had approved of only one man, a cruel man. What is it with Twilight stories and these terrible fathers who think that an abusive man is the perfect match for their daughter? Charlie Schwan would not tolerate this nonsense. She goes to play the piano and Max watches her. He gets randomly turned on watching her hair, now free of the usual kerchief she puts it into when she works. He asks her where she learned how to play the piano, but promises to ask her more about it while they're going. He helps her into her coat and wonders about the school insignia on it. This prompts her to ask how old she is, which is 23. Oh, and Kit liked old cars, and not all of them belong to Max, naturally. He doesn't know what to do with them since he prefers more contemporary vehicles. They get into the car and he asks for her address, which she gives to him, although I'm still sticking by my original statement that I don't know how to interpret any of what she said. As they drive, Max asks about how the weather is like in Albania. It snows more where in Albania she lived, a little town whose name I'm not even going to pretend to know how to pronounce. Who taught her how to play the piano? Her mother. He tries to ask her about why she moved to the UK, but she gets cagey, so he changes the topic. He asks her how it is that she's able to memorize the music, and she says that she sees the notes in color. And I probably would make fun of how much of a special snowflake that she is, but I literally do the same thing, so they get to where Magda lives, and Michael looks out from the front window. Max asks if it's her boyfriend, but she says that he's Magda's son and that he's only 14. Out of politeness, she invites him in for a cuppa, and why am I using actual British terminology instead of the author using the correct terms here? But he refuses both tea and coffee and then leaves. He's just happy that Michael isn't her boyfriend. Chapter 8. Inside, Michael asks who had dropped Alyssa off, but quickly drops the subject when she says that it was her boss. She asks where Magda is and then goes to find her. In the kitchen, Magda says that people from immigration came looking around for her. However, since the three of them were already at work or school for the day, they talked to the neighbor. He didn't like the look of them and told them that he'd never heard of anybody like that, so they left. However, Magda is worried about Elisa's status in the country and wants to write to Elisa's mother. Elisa begs her not to, and it probably has something to do with how come she left Albania in a hurry. Magda also reminds Elisa that she and Michael are leaving with Magda's fiance in 2 weeks for Canada, and Elisa needs to find a new place to live before that happens. Later, Elisa panics over her bad situation. She had found a place that wasn't too far from where she currently lives, although she would barely be able to afford the rent. As she spirals down a dark path without actually letting the readers know what actually happened, she snaps her out of it by telling herself to think about Max instead. She briefly considers asking him for help before immediately dismissing the idea, thinking that she wasn't going to drag him into her problems. The next morning, Elisa thinks about the lady that she has to clean house for that day. As she's thinking about the woman, Elisa wonders why it is that the lady doesn't live with her family in her advanced age. This gives Elisa the decision that maybe she should ask Mrs. Kingsbury if she's in need of a lodger. We finally jump over to Max, who is ashamed that he's reserved to happy solo fun times in the shower rather than to just have Elisa. However, he seems resolved to not have her and quickly tries to think about what he's going to do for the day. He later goes to the pub to meet up with his mates for a pint. No matter what country that they're from, a tool is a tool, I guess. One of them got his legs blown off in some war, and I don't care. His girlfriend is from back to health, and she's pressuring him to get married. I still don't care. But they finally get around to the actual plot, which is the fact that now that Max has the title, he needs to go on and find a nice lady to marry and have the appropriate number of children with. The other one makes a joke about hooking up with Marianne, but Max says that she apparently met somebody from the States. I literally don't care. As I said, these guys are just disgusting tools, and I like to drop kick them all into a volcano. I pray that we don't have to put up with any more of this macho posturing. The next day, Elisa goes back to clean Max's apartment. Instead of finding him in the kitchen, she sees Tweedledum wearing only a pair of boxers. Why Elisa doesn't become obsessed with him too is beyond me. Max chides him for having scared Elisa. Max calls out to Elisa and introduces her to Tweedledum. Tweedledum leaves, and after a moment, Tweedledee comes in. He's the one who got his leg blown up in the Middle East, and Elisa has a hard time not staring at his injuries. As Elisa eventually leaves, Max thinks about how he needs to put her onto an official payroll. Elisa is just glad when Tweedledee and Tweedledum finally leave. Max comes in saying that he was looking for a sweater and complains to her about how untidy that he is. I'm going to repeat that. He complains to his cleaning lady, whom he pays to clean his flat, that he is untidy. Max feels weird because he's literally using any excuse to touch her. He thinks that he should just ask her to dinner, but then worries that she might say no. He works himself up over the imaginary scenario in which she rejects him before he reminds himself that this literally never happened. He then sees Elisa looking at the forbidden room and tells her that it's a dark room before offering to show it to her. If they end up having happy fun times in the dark room, I am going to scream. So they go in, and there's no whips or chains like I'd been thinking. It's literally just a dark room. He takes her picture and tells her that she's beautiful. He then gets close to her, giving her time to pull away from him, and then he kisses her. They kiss for a while before they're interrupted by somebody pounding on Max's front door. Max is just annoyed that somebody would have gotten in through the ground floor, which I assume is one of those fancy things where pedestrians can't just enter without a key code or whatever. The man is pounding on the door, calling out for Max, stating that he's with immigration, which, why would you just barge up to a UK citizen who obviously has a lot of money and power along with that title and just start harassing him? I'm confused as to what the guy's endgame here is. Oh wait, It's obviously a cheap plot to get Max to marry Elisa or some kind of nonsense. Max looks out the peephole and sees two men standing there. He puts a chain on the door to prevent them from opening it, and even when he does open the door, they try to barge in anyway, which probably should have been a clue that something wasn't quite right. Max tries to ask to see some ID, but they quickly change the subject and demand that Max produce Elisa, and that's another red flag. Max asks to see their warrant, saying that they can't come in without one. The two men are baffled over the idea of needing to obey the law, and Max threatens to call the police when they continue to refuse to show him anything. The two men quickly leave when a neighbor comes out, but as they're going, the men threaten Max, saying that they'll be back. As they leave, Max thinks that the entire thing is nothing but a giant scam, if only because the UK does not call it immigration, but rather border force. I don't know if this is true or not, nor do I care enough to actually look it up. All I'm saying is that this is what Max explains to the readers. He goes back inside to try and find Elisa, only to realize that her things are gone. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because sometimes I drop random videos on other days too. You can like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a single video. While you're waiting for the next video, you can go check out all my other videos. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snarks on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Plus, you get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $3 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, $3 for every 5,000 words. You can contact me on Tumblr if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have 19 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, and 1 full-length novel. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys. The idea of checking pockets be through... As she's thinking about the woman,